back to the Sports Lab podcast. As we've got a lot to get into, joining me today is co-host Thomas Bailey. As we got to talk about the crazy week in the NFL that just happened. I'm going to talk about some unfortunate Yankees moves. We're going to talk about the Sabres being the Sabres. But let's get into it. Our Buffalo Bills were, while not big spenders, were pretty active over this last week. They extended Greg Rousseau to a 4-year, $80 million contract. They gave Josh Allen the biggest contract of in NFL history, 6 years, $330 million extension. They basically just wiped out the last 4 years of his contract and gave him that instead. So it was really a 2-year extension, but he got a big pay raise. They went out in free agency and they were active. They weren't big name shopping, but I mean they kind of were. Josh Palmer, 3-year, $36 million. Joey Bosa, the big name, 1 year, $12.6 million. They went and got Derek Forrest from Washington in a super small prove-it deal. They brought back Darrington Evans, special teams guy, Laviska Shenault, probably another special teams guy. And then they also re-signed a couple other guys. Fan favorite Ty Johnson, Reggie Gilliam, DeMar Hamlin, who very polarizing player. But let's start off with the earliest of them. As our last episode was last Friday, and the following day on Saturday, the Bills extended Greg Rousseau to a 4-year, $80 million contract, which I nailed on the head. I said it was going to be 4 years, 80 mil, and it was. Thomas, what are your thoughts on that extension?
I mean, I like it if he can actually finally take the final step in the developmental process, which is pass rushing. I think that he has every other tool that he needs to be a very good defensive lineman right now. He can run stop. He's got the length you want on the edge. He can really sniff out those passes and block them with his hands. But the issue is that pass rush capability is still lacking a little bit, but I think that the Bills are betting on him actually finally finishing that developmental process, and I think he will. I think it's just been a long process for him and this team, and I'm excited to see what happens with him. More importantly, though, with this deal, I think that kind of shakes off any kind of rumors that we go out and trade for a defensive end, because giving him the bag like this, the only other way that would make sense is if we traded him as part of the deal, and I don't think that we would ever trade somebody right after we sign him. It just doesn't make sense in my head, so I do think that, unfortunately, for the Bills fans that are like, oh my God, we need to go get Trey Hendrickson or whoever else is stupid like that. No offense, but I mean, at this point, I think that we already know that this is finally going to be the team heading into next season. And I mean, the Joey Bosa signing definitely clears that up even more before that, but I really like the move for Buffalo. I think 4 years, 80 mil is pretty much a steal in today's market. I think he's probably anywhere from like 10 to 12 in the defensive end rankings right now, just because he lacks the pass rush capabilities that some of the other guys still have. And so because of that, getting a top 10 to 12 defensive end in the league for $20 million this season, Brandon Beane, thank you so much. We should have never doubted you. I didn't, but some other people did, clearly, because Garrett didn't get signed here and other stupid shit. But I love the move. I think that you keep the players you have in-house, you trust the process, and in Brandon Beane we trust. I love this move.
Yeah, I think it is an absolute steal. The reason I think that is because even if he does not improve, like if this is the player we're getting, 9 sacks, 70 pressures last year, 10th in the league, and a top 5 run defender at the position, that's worth at least $20 million. Josh Sweat just got 4 years, 76 mil. Greg Rousseau is 100% better than Josh Sweat. So we got him at a steal. And that's if he doesn't improve. I would say Greg Rousseau right now is worth 22, 23, maybe even up to 25 mil with how the market's going. If he does improve, if he does take that final step and he's more consistent, because at his best, he could be a game wrecker. We saw in the Cardinals game this year, 3 sacks, absolutely took that game over. But we also saw in the playoffs against the Chiefs, worst game of the season was non-existent. So if he can just put together the consistency, he has the tools. I really think that he could be an upper echelon guy. I don't think he'll ever be Myles Garrett. I don't think he'll ever be TJ Watt, but I think he can be a step below that. I think there's kind of like there's Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, then there's like a
Again.
step below, and then there's another step, and that's where Greg Rousseau is. I think he can take the step to kind of close that gap, where I think at his peak in this market would be worth about $30 million, like a little bit worse version of a Nick Bosa. a little bit worse version of a Max Crosby. Right now, there's kind of a little bit of a gap. If he can close that gap, this contract looks like a steal. And I think he will, because if you look at the basic sack numbers, 9, not that great. But if you just look at his career trajectory, he's getting better every year. And a more telling stat is pressures, which he was 10th in the league with 70. The issue is, the other side, the other edge wasn't great. Von Miller had his moments, but outside of that, was pretty pitiful. Like AJ Epinesa had a 5% pass rush win rate last year, terrible. And then our pass rush up the gut, besides the 1 game a month at Oliver, was pretty non-existent. So Greg Rousseau would get pressure, and then they would just move to the left or step up in the pocket and be able to complete the pass because no one else was getting pressure. Clearly, Bean saw that as a weakness, so he's fixing that, or attempting to fix that this offseason. So I think if they could get more pressure around with Greg Rousseau's size and athleticism, he can continue getting pressures off the edge. They have nowhere to go, and I think Greg Rousseau can easily get 12, 13, 14 sacks. I don't think he'll ever be a 18, 19 sack guy, but if he can get me in his prime 12 to 13 sacks a year for a couple years while being a top 5 run defender, perfectly fine. Great move. I think this is a steal. The way the contract is set up is really nice. It gives us some cap flexibility for this year and next year before it starts to jump a little bit. But I think Bean's kind of really set himself up for like a 2-year window of being able to be pretty aggressive before probably after next season having to do a little bit of a retool. Not saying like we're going to be bad and have to do a retool, but I'm just saying with contracts and extensions and the salary cap, there might have to be a little more jockeying going around. But this year and next year, he's kind of set himself really nice for the offseason. Right now, I'm estimating, because it's hard with all the contract details not being out, that we have about $30 million in cap space next year with McGovern, Benford, Cook, among others, still like that need to be extended, obviously. And there's a lot of cut candidates. So that could be Knox saves like 10 mil. Samuel saves a couple mil. Epinesa, well, not Epinesa, actually a free agent, but there's a couple other guys I remember looking. But there's easy ways to open up more cap space to where we can go out and sign more guys next year and keep all of our guys. So I think Bean has really set up these 2 years really well. As I'll move into the next extension, that would be Josh Allen getting the absolute bag. I think this is the best contract of that Bean has gotten in his entire career. Josh Allen just won MVP and did not reset the quarterback market. I think the last quarterback to do that was probably Tom Brady, who was notorious for taking a pay cut. And how lucky are we to have this guy? He literally told his agent, do whatever you can to not hurt the Bills' cap. Obviously, he was going to get a pay raise. Josh knew that, and Josh deserved it. So obviously, him going in to get the pay raise, every person of the right mind would do that. He got the pay raise, but he also didn't. He could have easily gotten 3 years, $90 million, which is what I was expecting. Instead, he took a $10 million a year pay cut to really help the Bills. That $10 million is going to help them get another starter or a couple good depth pieces. Really going to help, or maybe extend someone that they weren't able to be able to extend, like maybe a James Cook. So I think he did a great job. He's like, I want to stay here in Buffalo my entire career, make sure this contract does not hurt the team. And Bean did a great job of being able to set it up that way. So an absolute A++ contract for him. I mean, what more can you like about Josh Allen? He is beloved by the city of Buffalo, and he keeps proving why everyone loves him here. As I toss it over to you for you to give your thoughts on the contract before we get into free agency.
I love the move for Buffalo, obviously, just giving him a couple more years on that extension. Honestly, he's literally going to be paid up there with the second highest paid quarterbacks in the league for right now, because as soon as they all are re-upping, it's going to be 65, 70 million a season for these quarterbacks. And Josh Allen, we're going to be sitting here looking pretty with 55 million for the next few years. So I really like the move long-term for the Bills. A lot of people are like, he still has time on his deal. What's the point in extending him now and giving him more money now? It makes no sense. I think it's just they're preparing for what's going to happen in the future. And I think that is a very important thing for the Buffalo Bills. On top of that, he said literally came out and said, "What's $5 million more for me right now that I can't do with my life right now? I have a pretty good life. I have a house, I have a car, I'm good."
Dating a movie
Literally,
star, how to marry
yeah,
a movie
literally.
star, a hot movie star to be exact.
You'll love this kid. You'll love this kid, man. You'll love him. He is literally the best quarterback in the game, just overall between good person and good player. And I think that very much so. So Josh Allen getting there, getting that extension, it helps the team out long term, helps us get some more money on the table for other moves that Brandon Beane can do, which we've seen him make better moves with less money. So I think that this is something that we can always look forward to seeing with the Buffalo Bills. Players like that wanting to take cap hits. It's a lovely little thing here for the Buffalo Bills. I love Josh Allen, and I think it's been a great offseason so far in the department for the extensions.
All right, as we move into free agency, I'm going to group some of these together just to save a little bit of time. But probably the biggest change to the Bills so far has been their edge room. They cut Von Miller, saving about $9 million against the cap this year, and then getting rid of the rest of the deal. So it's about 26 mil safe next year, and so on and so forth. Then they brought in Michael Hoyt from the Rams on a 3-year, $21 million contract. The details have it where it's really like a 2-year, $13 million contract, and he can be cut after that second year if needed. It gives more flex or cap flexibility to the team. And then the big signing for the Bills of the offseason was bringing in Joey Bosa, a 1-year, $12.6 million contract, up to $15 million with incentives. Very polarizing deal, as obviously we know Joey Bosa to be an absolute beast, but these last couple of years, the production has dipped. He's struggled to stay on the field. Thomas, what are your overall thoughts on how Beane has handled the edge group so far in free agency?
I mean, if you think about it, the Buffalo Bills right now, their biggest weakness was pass rushing. They need somebody that can rush the passer and can do that very, very well. And in my honest opinion, you got probably the best guy on the market for that in Joey Bosa when he's healthy, which, pardon, but when he's healthy, I think Joey Bosa is easily a top 10 defensive end. I think that a lot of people don't understand how good of a defensive end Joey Bosa is because he's just not on the field. It's almost like a "what have you done for me" like recently kind of deal with Joey Bosa. Back-to-back seasons with injuries. He's been dealing with a lot. He's still only 30 years old, guys. Like, he is still
29
a stud.
currently, actually.
Yeah, he's still going to be 30 for the season. Like, this guy is still younger than what people think. And everybody's been saying, "Oh, we got our new Von Miller." Like, no, very, very different. We didn't sign this guy to a 5-year deal. We didn't sign him to a mega contract. We got him for 1 season at $12.6 million. And that is an absolute steal for the player that Joey Bosa is, in my opinion. He is not only going to take on double teams after they finally realize how much of a freaking problem he is, and then he's going to give the floor to Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau to go get the quarterback on a consistent basis. You're not going to be able to guard all three at the same time. It's just not going to happen for you. And then the best part, another thing on the defensive line, Larry Ogunjobi for the middle, a 300-pound D lineman. Finally, he can come in and stop the run up the middle because obviously I love Ed Oliver, but he's a pass rush specialist defensive tackle. We needed somebody on the opposite side of him that can stop the run, and we finally got that as well. This is what I'm talking about with the Bills right now. They're not making huge moves with like these superstars, but what they are doing is going out and filling our niche needs. They're filling the needs. We need a pass rusher. Let's go get a pass rush specialist. We need a run stopper. Let's go get a 300-pound D lineman for the first time in 5 seasons. They're going out and making plays, making moves for players that are good at what we need. Everybody needs pass rush, right? But the thing is with the Bills, that's the one thing they've lacked for the last couple seasons, especially in the championship game against the Chiefs. They were non-existent. And I love Greg Rousseau, but you got dominated by a left guard playing left tackle. You got dominated by an offensive guard playing left tackle. That is not acceptable in the AFC Championship game. It's just not. And then you look at the Super Bowl. Joe Thuney was on his ass every other play, bro. Every other play by the Eagles D-line. Because of that, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Brandon Beane looked at that and said, yeah, we need to upgrade the pass rush because if they have a good pass rush and they finally shut down Mahomes, that's all we need. And that's the thing with this team. I really like Buffalo. I like the moves that they're making. Very niche needs, though. Like not everybody needs a 300-pound D lineman to stop the run. That's very specific. But I love that from Brandon Beane. It shows that he's taking his job seriously. It shows that he watches the film. It shows that he's watching the games. Because just the average person wouldn't know that you need a 300-pound D lineman specifically. Like nobody just knows that stuff. And to go out there and just watch the film, to take your job as seriously as Brandon Beane does, I love that. I love that to hell and back because it's the first time we have some consistency within the room between him and McDermott at coach and general manager. I don't remember the last time. Maybe the Levy era, probably, but it's just crazy to see for this Buffalo Bills team. I'm liking what they're doing with the defensive line. I think it's been very good. Even Michael Hoyt, if you get to the front seven in general, he looks very good. I love these moves for Buffalo. They're very niche needs, and I think that it's something that is very underrated for the rest of the league, but us Bills fans know is a huge upgrade.
Yeah, I love the moves also. What I love the most about the Joey Bosa is it's only a 1-year deal. I think Brandon Beane learned his lesson with Devon Miller, even though it was more so unlucky because of the torn ACL.
And yeah,
To aging pass rushers who have had injury problems, don't give them out big contracts. And with Joey Bosa, if he comes in and he plays really well, maybe he earns a 2-year extension, a 3-year extension. It's not just, it doesn't have to just be a 1-year thing, but if it goes badly, it's only a 1-year thing. So there's not much risk, very high reward. And yes, Joey Bosa eats double teams very well. He was still top 15 in the entire league out of defensive ends in double team rate with about 40% of the time. And he graded out above average, above expected against double teams. He's good against double teams. And everyone's like, oh, injury concerns. Yeah, but that's when he's playing for the Chargers where he's playing 80%, 90%. He's playing like 70 snaps a game. For the Bills, he's only going to have to play 30, 40 snaps. He's playing half the time because the Bills love to rotate guys out, which is going to take a lot less off his body. And he's going to, as he said, I want to be here for the important moments. I want to make the big play while I still have time left in my career. He wants to win. He wants to be the guy that gets that sack on Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship game, to get that sack on Lamar Jackson and those in the playoffs, because those are what's really matter. We're not paying him to have a bunch of sacks in September by playing every single snap. We're playing him on third down, 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Who is going to get that sack to lead us to the Super Bowl? Or if we ever make it to a Super Bowl, in the Super Bowl, who's going to make those plays? And I believe Joey Bosa can, especially if they limit his snap count, and not to mention he's a good run defender. If you look at this Bills defensive end group, all of them except for Javon Solomon are all plus run defenders. And Javon Solomon's probably the fifth guy in the depth chart. He's kind of was a stab in the dark we took to maybe develop as a pass rusher down the line. So we weren't expecting that of him. Joey Bosa, very good run defender. Greg Rousseau, obviously an elite run defender. Michael Hoyt is a very good run defender. AJ Epinesa is a good run defender. Clearly, Beane saw an issue of we couldn't stop the run last year, and he is getting a lot of guys who can. And we still have the draft with 10 picks to go and improve that even more. So I love what I've seen out of Brandon Beane so far out of this edge group. And not to mention, I think the Michael Hoyt is the most underrated signing of the Bills. Maybe the second most. I'll get into the other one. I think this contract's going to be great. What Michael Hoyt basically reminds me of is if you combine Dwayne Smoot and Casey Tuhill and then make him a lot better. He can bring that run defense that Dwayne Smoot, but he also has an extreme athletic upside like Casey Tuhill. He can play special teams as he had 3 blocked kicks last year. Do you remember the last time the Bills blocked a kick? I think it was Jordan Phillips like a couple of years ago. It has been a while. Like I get that's not super important, but who knows? Maybe we could. The Chiefs just won a game last year off that. Like, yeah, it's not like it doesn't happen all the time, but if he could even get 1 or 2 of them this year, that's an improvement over the 0 we've had the last couple of years. So that's a niche upgrade. And not to mention, what Michael Hoyt is one of the best athletes in the entire defensive end. He had like a raw athletic score of 9.93 out of 10 coming out. He grew up only a couple hours from Buffalo in Ontario, Canada. So he's near his home crowd. So maybe he'll be even a little more fired up as maybe he'll have more family that can come and watch him being so close to home. So that may give him a little more energy too. And he's so versatile. You could put him as a defensive end to stop the run. And then on like third and longs, you could put him next to Ed Oliver in that D tackle room because he's pretty big, he's pretty strong, he's athletic, and you can have a pass rushing like four of Greg Rousseau, Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, and Ed Oliver, all very big, quick, athletic guys. It's going to be pretty hard for a quarterback to. It's going to be pretty hard for an offensive line to be able to block all five guys like that, rushing the passer at once. So I think, yeah, is he going to be this 10 to 12 sack guy? Is he going to be this big play guy? No, but he brings in a very niche role, like you said, at a not very expensive price. He fits a hole very, very well. And I think the defensive end group now is better than when it started before free agency. I think Hoyt is an upgrade over Smoot, a big upgrade. And I think Joey Bosa is an upgrade over Von Miller. And there's still the draft. Maybe they want to add a young guy in the draft. Like everyone's like, oh, what about this, that, and the third? We still have 10 picks in this draft. We have 3 top 62 picks, and then 7 picks from rounds.
I'm being honest, I would love it if we go and draft somebody because think about it. You draft the defensive end to sit under Bosa for the year. Bosa goes and leaves in free agency next year. Because personally, I don't think we can re-sign Bosa. Even if he has a great year, I just don't think it's going to happen because we still have to extend Benford, Cook, McGovern. Like we have too many people, and like you said, there's only 30 million. So,
well, there's other moves that you could easily get to like 50, 60 million at that point, but that's for another
like
time.
Dawson Knox, cut him.
Yeah, or among others, or if he takes a pay cut. Anyways, that's future talk for next year mostly. But I actually am not. I mean, I'm not opposed to drafting an edge rusher, but I would much rather us see go like with the early picks, corner. Obviously, that's still a big need. We'll get into that. Defensive tackle. We still need another big nose tackle and wide receiver before I go edge because I think we keep 5 edges on the roster. I think right now we have 5 guys who are. I wouldn't be opposed to maybe taking a developmental guy in the later rounds, but I think that if we don't go edge this year, we can just go edge next year because we'll have other needs filled in the draft this year if we can't bring back Bosa, or maybe guys continue to develop. Like, obviously, if a good edge rusher falls in the first round, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, why are we drafting an edge rusher? This is stupid. I could definitely see the path. Just personally, I would rather, I guess I'd rather hope the draft falls out where we aren't taking edge. We're a good corner, a good defensive tackle fall because yes, corner is still our big need as we haven't signed any corners yet, but we did trade Kaiir Elam to the Dallas Cowboys. We gave up one of our 6th this year, and we got back a 5th from Dallas this year, and a 7th rounder next year. And we saved $2.5 million against the cap. Again, I think this is Brandon Beane just taking advantage of Jerry Jones's old age and just being stupid. I mean, I get it. I get why I guess Dallas would want to take a stab on him. They don't have to give up a lot, but he's pretty bad. And maybe a new change of scenery, maybe a new system, he could play better, but he's pretty bad. And it sucks to see that because I loved him coming out of college. I thought he was going to be an absolute stud for us. It never worked out. But now Beane has added to his war chest of picks to go in the first round, say a Will Johnson or a Jade Barron or a Kenneth Grant falls. We trade up to 21, 22 and go snag one of those guys, or maybe a Mike Green or a Shamar Stewart falls, something like that. Sitting at 30, we could jump up to a 21, 22 without having to mortgage the future because we have, I guess we wouldn't be mortgaging the future, but without killing our depth because we have these extra picks to be able to trade with 2 fourths, 3 fifths, and 2 sixths. And the 1 6th is a super early 6. We literally from like pick 170 or like pick like 165 to like 175. We have like 4 picks in that area. It's pretty funny. So obviously, I think some of them get traded. Maybe we trade back some of them for picks next year. But there's so many different. Beane has so much flexibility coming into this draft that he hadn't. It wasn't looking like going into free agency. So I think that's great. I guess I'll bring it over to you. What are your thoughts on the cornerback room so far?
Ooh, I don't like it right now. I mean, you only really got Johnson and, of course, Benford, but I don't like the fact that we haven't extended Benford yet. I don't like the fact that we haven't at least gone out and signed somebody. I mean, we have Dane Jackson, who we signed, I guess, to be
No, we
fair.
haven't signed him
Yeah, we signed Dane Jackson, didn't we?
today, unless it literally
Was it
just happened.
yesterday?
No, we didn't.
It was like
No,
yesterday or
there's
something.
there's a lot of people talking about it, but we hadn't officially signed him yet. Yeah, no, we haven't signed Dane Jackson yet.
Oh, no, we haven't. Okay, well, we could go after Dane Jackson, a former Bill, come back, play Buffalo football again. I would not like that personally. And
Oh,
I mean,
I would.
maybe as depth I'd like, but as a starter, no. Please
Oh
no.
well, I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to sign a starter. I think we draft a starter. I personally would like Dane Jackson. I think he knows the system would be a good CB4,
Oh yeah.
just in case some say the rookie we draft ends up getting injured or Benford gets injured. We can plug him in and at least know what we're getting. We know he's not going to be messing up assignments and allowing big plays. He's not going to be great, but he's not going to lose his games.
Right. See, I also like if we stay with the Chargers pipeline here, if we just go with Asante Samuel, I'd love that. He is pretty bad at tackling, which does suck, especially as an outside corner. But I definitely think that he could still be a very good fit in the Buffalo system. I think tackling is something that you can very much still fix, especially with Sean McDermott's system. We looked at Rasul Douglas, who was pretty poor at tackling, and he kind of turned into one of our better tacklers in the secondary come the end of the season. Obviously, Rasul Douglas is not coming back at this point. Sad, but I don't think so. I would like Asante Samuel if we do sign somebody. And then as for the draft, I would love it if we got Benjamin Morrison. I would love that fit. He's got big game experience, obviously, playing for Notre Dame, who just made it to the national championship game. He is a health risk with his heart condition that he's been having, but so is Montez Sweat. So is so many other players. So is Trey Smith in the 6th round. He went to the Chiefs, and here he is playing just fine. I think that the heart condition is an overrated thing. Like, I think that he's going to be a good player regardless of that heart condition. And I think that the Buffalo Bills should take advantage of other teams, being scared to draft this guy. I would not be surprised if Buffalo takes somebody else in the 1st round, like Walter Nolan or someone else at D tackle that's available. And then in the 2nd round, we go and pick Benjamin Morrison to be our opposite side in the top of the 2nd round. And obviously, we have 2 2nd-round picks, so we could trade our 2nd-round pick and then pair it with one of those 4ths or a couple of those 5ths or a 5th and a 6th and move back up into the early going of the
We have
2nd
three
round.
sevenths next year as well.
Yeah, and then take a Benjamin Morrison. I mean, I'd love that move perfectly. I think that fills in the needs for the Bills better than taking Morrison at 30 because if you take Morrison that high, you're not going to have a D tackle there. Like, this D tackle class, in my opinion, is not as deep as people are making it out to be. In my opinion, I think that there's still some good D tackles down the board. I just feel like the gap is a little bit more than what people are understanding. I think clearly number 1 is Mason Graham. Like, no doubt
Yeah,
in my mind, it's Mason Graham. And then
I think Kenneth Grant's clearly number 2.
the only other two that I consider to be very good are Grant and Nolan. And Nolan is only if he goes to the right team.
No, Derek Harmon.
See,
I actually like Harmon more than Nolan because he's bigger for the Bills.
if you want me to be honest here with Derek Harmon from Oregon, I think that he's good, but again, it's just I think he's going to have to be drafted to a team specific to his talents. I think a team that would fit him very well is Pittsburgh. I think he's basically Keanu Benton to me. That's literally what I think of when I think of Harmon. I think of Keanu Benton, the D tackle for Pittsburgh. I would like that fit for Pittsburgh, but for us specifically, I don't like that fit, especially if he's not going to be a starter. However, Kenneth Grant, I can fully get behind if we take Kenneth Grant, and then we move up and pick up Morrison. Best draft in 100 years for me if that happens. But back to the cornerback room. I still like the corner room. The secondary overall, though, I'm a little nervous about. I think Derek Forrest is very underrated as a Ron Rivera guy, another player that can play the system of Sean McDermott pretty well. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But if he kind of flops, then we got to start Hamlin again, which, of course, maybe.
You're forgetting about someone.
Well, Cole Bishop, yeah.
Yeah. Bishop
But
and
I
Rap
think
is most likely the starting duo.
yeah, right now, but I don't know. With Rapp's injury history, he could very easily get injured again, and then we have to resort to Hamlin or Forrest. And then obviously, I'm excited for Taylor Rapp. I think Rapp's a very good player, but I have to see him get healthy. And then Cole Bishop, very excited to see what the youngster can do. But overall, I think this draft for the Bills is going to be the most important part of this offseason, just to see what we do to finish out this offseason, because right now, the cornerback room doesn't look that great, and I think that we might need another guy in the trenches.
Yeah, I think those are kind of our two big needs right now are CB2 and nose tackle. But again, 3 picks in the top 62. We can easily, and all those day 3 picks, we can easily go and get the guys that we want. And I trust Bean. He doesn't have the greatest track record of drafting in the first round, but I think that's a little overrated. Greg Rousseau looks like he's on the track to becoming really, really good. Got him at pick 30. Dalton Kincaid was 11th all time in receiving yards as a rookie, and then he battled injuries last year. So time will tell. Maybe he can continue to develop. He got Josh Allen. Like people just kind of over. Oh, he drafted Josh Allen. Ed Oliver is maybe not living up to the 9th overall pick, but he's still a very good player. In a redraft, he definitely still goes in the first round. He's still one of the top 30 players from that draft, in my opinion. I still think he's very good. And I get and then we traded our pick in 2020 that got so really he's only drafted one bust in the first round. That's Kyrie Elam. Yeah, I get the not lack of stars, but what stars has KC drafted these last couple years in the first round? Maybe Xavier Worthy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, no. That defensive end that they got from Kansas State, no. They've had a lot of busts in the first round also, but it hasn't really hurt them. So I think that's a very overrated part. I still trust Beans drafting. Still think he's one of the best GMs in the league. And I think this D tackle class is pretty deep. I would love if we miss out D tackle first round and Alfred Collins in the second round. He may be the best run defender in the class, and he's a giant. He doesn't have the pass rushing upside, but I think we have other guys that can kind of fill that pass rushing up as the one tack. Hoyt / Ogunjobi, I think would be good there. And then Alfred Collins, just that big boy that eats up double teams on early downs, I think would be a great rotation. I think we just need to add a piece and then let McDermott and Babbage kind of work with it. But onto the secondary, I still think cornerback 2 is a big need. I personally, at this point, don't really want to see get like an Asante Samuel because I think we just have to pay too much for him. I don't really want to sign it. If I'm being honest, I don't really want to sign a starter. I want to sign a Dane Jackson because he would be a good sort of CB4, and then we draft our starter to obviously to be this starter of the future. And then Dane would be a perfect guy because, as I mentioned, he knows the system. He's played here before, and he's spot started. And he's done all right. When Trey White was dealing with injuries, he'd come in, and when Levi Wells was dealing with injuries, he'd come in and he'd play okay. He wasn't great. He wasn't awful. He was just okay, and we'd get him pretty cheap. So I think that would be a good signing. Or if they want to maybe go for a high upside swing, like a CJ Henderson or a Jeff Okudah, very athletic corners drafted early in the first round. So far, their careers haven't worked out, but maybe you want to take a swing at one of those guys and see if you can kind of develop them into becoming very good corners. Who knows? There's different, as long as we get someone, though, I think we can't go into the draft with our second best outside corner being Daquan Hardy, Brandon Codrington. We have to get at least someone, and I think we will. And then the safety room, I like what they've done so far. I don't think getting a Javon Holland or anything like that would have been very smart. I think just getting depth. I don't hate bringing back Hamlin as long as he is not start. As long as the starting duo
Yeah.
next year, week 1, is a combo of Rapp, Forrest, and Bishop, I'm happy. Just no Hamlin. I get him as a backup. $2 million, knows this system, again, can come in and play okay. He's not going to allow some 80-yard touchdown because he's out of position because he doesn't know the system very well. Like he'll be okay. He's not good, but he'll be okay. So I like that. And then the Derek Forrest signing, I really like that too because he drafted in 2021 and then was a full-time starter in 2022 when he made some really good plays. Obviously, the one that's going around social media is that hit against Travis Etienne where he got the ball to bounce back like 10 yards. Very good hitter. He's a ball hawk too, kind of. When he gets playing time, he takes good angles on the ball and he can go up and catch it. So he's a playmaker and he's very athletic. I think he had like a above a 9 on the raw athletic score. So I think he's a good toolsy guy for McDermott to he's going to know the system again because McDermott coached under Ron Rivera in Carolina. Derek Forrest was a starter for Ron Rivera. Then he got injured. A new regime took over, and he kind of just lost his starting bid to Jeremy Chin, who's a good player, so you can't really fault him for that. And again, he's a low risk guy. 1 year, I think it's like 1.65 mil or something like that. If it doesn't work out, whatever. We're not really paying him anything. We're paying him to be a backup. So at worst, he's worth his money. And who knows? Maybe I'll rap with his injury history gets injured. Bishop gets injured, or maybe he's just really bad. You go and start him there, and then maybe he plays really well. Now you found us. It could be. I'm not saying it will, but it has the potential to turn out like a Jordan Poirier, like a Hyde. They didn't get the playing time. They didn't get the recognition. We got them on super cheap deals, and then they developed. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's the upside there. And for how much we paid for him, I love it. But I think that's all we have for the defense. We covered all of the signings. On the offensive side of the ball, we didn't really do nearly as much. Brought back Ty Johnson, 2-year, $5 million. Brought back Reggie Gilliam on a 1-year deal. And then I guess the most money we shelled out, the big guy, again, another very polarizing signing was Joshua Palmer. He likes Joshua, not Josh. So Joshua Palmer, 3-year, $36 million from the Chargers, $18 million guaranteed. Thomas, what are your thoughts, I guess, on the Ty Johnson signing, because the Gilliam one's whatever, and then the Joshua Palmer signing?
I mean, obviously, bringing back the unicorn that is Ty Johnson is always lovely. I've wanted him back since the time that I found out he was a free agent. Very cool to see that he's back on the team. I'm very excited to see what he can do, especially now that we know what he is for the team. Obviously, 2 years, $5 million. He probably could have got more money from someone else, if I'm being honest, to play on a worse team. But I think that he wanted to stand a contender like us. He knows our system well, obviously, so I like that move there, not bringing in a new guy in the running back room, because I feel like that would also make it worse in the James Cook situation, bringing in a running back from outside, like what's going on with the James Cook news if we're bringing in another running back that's not even familiar with our system. But nonetheless, I like that move. And then on to the Joshua Palmer signing. I like this move a lot. I think that 3 years is a little much. I think it's giving a lot of what Curtis Samuel's was, obviously a little bit more, but I think that Curtis Samuel is nowhere near the player that Joshua Palmer is. Palmer's more consistent at everything versus, him. And then one thing that Palmer brings to the table that a lot of people have underrated so far after the signing is he is a separator. He can get open. And I can't tell you how many times we see Josh Allen break a sack, roll out to the right, look downfield, and throw a 40-yard bomb to Shakir or to Ray Davis last season. All those kinds of plays. We bring out those kinds of moves. I think that Joshua Palmer is going to be on the receiving end of most of those. He always likes to just kind of get over and creep away from the safety, and then he's wide open. Josh Allen using his athletic ability, throwing that ball deep. I think that's going to be a match made in heaven. And then another thing that he is a way better version of Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That's literally what I think of him as. He is that deep threat that we need. Obviously, losing Matt Collins, he is the new deep threat on the Buffalo Bills roster. And again, like I said about the entire defense, it's a niche need for the Bills. You get two things that most Bills receivers right now don't have: the speed to separate and the route running separation. The only other guy on the team that can actually separate with route running, in my opinion, is Shakir. And Coleman, yes, he's clunky with it. He's getting better, but I still think that he's just more of that physical guy. And then you look at the rest of this team right now, you might need another receiver in the draft too. So I love the move for Palmer. He fits that niche need of a deep threat. Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, two of the best arms in the league. Not a dip at all for Palmer when it comes to if he can actually make sure to get him the ball deep. If anything, it's more of like he's definitely getting you that ball now. Like Herbert might have missed one or two. Allen won't miss one. I think that this is one of those signings for the Bills that's super important. One thing I will say, though, is after he has the ball in his hands, he doesn't have that end-to-end speed like you'd want. He ran a 4.63 40-yard dash coming out of college. I think
4.51.
that he's a 4.51.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
what I
well,
saw. I saw
still
4.51.
4.5.
Still not great. Yeah,
Might have been the pro day that I'm thinking of. I don't know.
yeah.
But
I don't know.
either
The
way,
number
though,
I
a
saw was
4.51
4.51.
40. Yeah, so he's not the fastest guy, but at the same time, all you really need him to do is get that route running, cook a safety, cook a corner, whatever, and get open. And all he's got to do is make the catch. And a lot of people have been complaining about those kinds of things because if he's going to catch the ball and he doesn't score, then what's the point in bringing him in? If he catches the ball, he's probably getting tackled at the 5-yard line. And if he's getting tackled at the 5-yard line, the Bills are finishing that drive with a touchdown. I don't care. 4 tries to get 5 yards with Josh Allen as your quarterback, James Cook as your running back. Yeah, it's cooked. It's cooked. And so because of that, I think that this is a very good signing for the Bills. A lot of people will underrate this one as well. Not as many touchdowns or receiving yards or catches overall, but he is our version of basically Zay Flowers and Marquez Valdez-Scantling mixed. He's the route runner that creates separation and the deep threat, and I love that move for the Bills.
Yeah, I have a lot of stats to talk about for Josh Palmer since on my other podcast I did a deep dive into him. But this is his stats over the last 3 years. 2022, as a 23-year-old, because not to mention he is only 25 years old right now. At his
Yeah.
second year in the league, in 16 games, 72 catches, 769 yards, and 3 touchdowns as a wide receiver 3. He was Herbert's like third or fourth option on those teams, and he still had almost 800 yards in his second year in the league. And then in 2023, in only 11 games, and only 8 of them with Justin Herbert, because that was a completely disastrous season, still managed to have 38 catches, 581 yards, and 2 touchdowns. If you put that out to a 17-game season, that's like over 50 catches for almost 900 yards and like 4 touchdowns. That's is the wide receiver 3 behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Then in 2024, he was still the wide receiver 3 because they drafted Quentin Johnson. They drafted Ladd McConkey very high. Obviously, they're going to want those 2 guys to be the focal point. And a Greg Roman run-heavy scheme that is not very friendly for wide receivers. You saw that in Baltimore. He still had 39 catches for 584 yards and a touchdown. And that is, again, and that run-heavy scheme. And if you watch the Chargers game, it'd probably take me at least 2 hands to count the amount of times where Josh Palmer was open deep and Herbert just missed him. He does not have a good connection with him last year. He missed open. If Josh Palmer even catches 3 of those, now he's over 700 yards. He's probably 800 yards and like 4 or 5 touchdowns. If Herbert can just manage to hit him on those. And again, that's just his production. His hands, 5% drop rate in his career, very good. He caught 8 out of 8 contested catches last year. Again, very good. So he can get open down the field. He doesn't drop the ball and is good through contact. And how do we know he can get open down the field? He was 10th in the league in route win rate last year against man. Want to know who the Bills' highest receiver was at that? Amari Cooper at 61st. It was really bad last year. Now we have someone who can get open against man. And they want to say, oh, the 5.41 speed. You don't need speed to be a vertical separator. And having speed doesn't automatically make you a vertical separator. Obviously, if you have speed plus the technique, it makes you even better at it. But to become a good vertical separator, you need a good release package. You need to be able to track the ball well. You need to be able to understand positioning. And Palmer is great at all of those. He's not going to burn you off the line, but he's going to beat your man coverage. He's going to run a crisp route, and he's going to position himself really well to stack between the corner and the safety where he's not running into them. He's running away from them, and then he'll track the ball really well and then come down with it. I don't care on a 50-yard pass if he gets tackled at the 5-yard line, as long as he catches. Instead of us being at our 40, now we're at our 5. How was that ever a bad thing? Oh, no, we didn't score. What do you do? Like you said, I'm trusting Josh Allen to get us 5 yards in 4 plays. It's going to happen. It's very rare we don't score on those. And worst case scenario, we settle for a field goal or turnover on downs, and then the team now has the ball inside their own 5-yard line. It's not a bad thing. Yeah, it would be cool if he had the speed to be able to finish it, but whatever. Like, I don't get why it's such an issue. And then you want to go to the contract. Oh, 3 years, 36 for a wide receiver three. That's the market for wide receivers three. Why Donnie Brown just got 1 year, 12 mil. Darius Slayton got the same contract, 3 years, 36 mil. And I would say Josh Palmer is definitely better than De'Ami Brown. And then he's 3 years younger than Slayton while being a similar level receiver. And he got the same AAV. And you look at it, it's only 18 million guaranteed, which means that it's probably set up. If I had to guess, Spot Track hasn't dropped the contract details. I would guess year one this year, the cap hit's probably about $7 million. Then next year, I bet the cap hit moves up to about 10 million. And then there's probably an out where we can cut him, where there's maybe a mil or two in dead cap for that final year. That's like 16, $17 million cap hit. I bet you there's going to be incentives based on it for games played, for yards, stuff like that. So it's like 7 up to 9, 10 up to 12, 16 up to 18, something like that. Where if he doesn't continue to develop and he ends up just being someone who gets you 500-600 yards for 7, 8, 9 mil, that's decent value. And then it doesn't develop. All right, we just cut him and we don't have to pay him that whole contract. We only pay him 18, 20 million out of the 36 over 2 years, which is not bad. Bean is very good at setting up contracts that way, where you look on paper, how is he getting so much money? But then he sets it up where if you look at it, there's easy outs where if they don't live up to that potential, you just cut them. And then you can move money around with converting to signing bonuses, and you can do all this. Bean is very good at getting cap compliant, circumventing the cap to be able to get the players he wants. It was, in my opinion, it's probably his best trait, is he is elite at circumventing the cap. I mean, you saw last year we went from having $40 million we were 40 million over the cap space, and we were able to get through that just fine and just made the AFC Championship game. Like, he is elite at that. So I'm not too worried about the numbers at all. I want to see them, I guess, fully before I give my full judgment. But that is just based on how other contracts Bean has made. That's my guess on how it will be. So I
Did you
think
see that Joey Bosa and Joshua Palmer went to the same high school?
I did not know that. I know Josh Palmer also grew up in Canada. He grew up 30
Yeah.
minutes from Michael Hoyt. Then what? He must have moved.
Yeah, so they went to high school in Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas, and
Different timing though.
Palmer was a freshman.
Oh,
Like
Palmer must have
when
just spent more.
Bosa,
Was a
when
senior.
Bosa wasn't a senior anymore. He had just graduated. Palmer was a freshman the year after Bosa graduated.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say then Palmer must have just stayed longer in college. I'm gonna say they got drafted like 5 years apart. But yeah. No, that's interesting. I didn't know. I knew he grew up again.
And then
he's
teammates on the Chargers and now teammates on the Bills. Like, dude, just get away from me.
One thing I'm trying to wrap my head around: how are we able to sign all these LA guys without any palm trees? Like, how are we actively able to get these players away from palm trees to sign a Buffalo? I thought no one wanted to come to Buffalo because we didn't have palm trees. I'm confused, Kevin Adams. How is that possible? Oh, wait, it's because the Bills are actually good.
Yeah, see, I told my friend, I was like, the Bills are paying back the NFL for what for what our NHL counterparts couldn't do. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, bro, we're signing all the LA people because we don't have palm trees and they have palm trees, but because we couldn't sign anybody because we didn't have palm trees for the NHL team. Yeah. He doesn't watch hockey, but he's like, dude, that's fucked. I explained it to him.
That's
hilarious.
But yeah,
Brandon Bean's like, fuck you guys. I'm defending my teams.
Palmer also grew up, again, only a couple hours from Buffalo. So, again, another Canada guy. So that could be another boost. You never know how much family can do to someone. You have your family in the crowd, you're good. Usually you're going to want to play better. I know that's maybe not a big thing, but again,
not even helpful. Just that, though. The fact that he's familiar with the area, he's close to home. You know, like, he can have a house and settle down. You know, he doesn't have to, like, leave or something. Worry about those kinds of things.
Yeah. And then my last point before we move into the NFL is, Genmo, we spent a lot of time in the Bills, but that's fine. We had a lot to talk about. Just the Ty Johnson, I just want to get my quick thoughts. I love the move. I think Ty Johnson is the best third down back in the league. He's elite pass protector, elite receiver, and it's not like he's a bad runner. I think he had like 5.2 yards per carry or something. He's a very good. You give him 5 to 7 carries a game. You have him get 2 to 3 catches and be a great pass blocker for only 2.5 mil a year. Absolute steal. So great move again by Bean. Oh, and then we also signed Darrington Evans and Laviska Shenault. There's not really much you guys need to know about them. They're just going to be special teams / practice squad guys. Not every signing has to be for someone to be a starter or be
I think it's
like this
funny with the
great
Laviska Shenault
player.
thing.
You have 90 people on your training camp roster. So these guys, we're signing them to probably veterans where there's not anything guaranteed really. If they show how good they are in special teams and make the roster to be a special teams guy, then cool. If they don't, then cool. No harm, no foul. It's just so we have bodies for camp. So I think people are looking too much into these signings just because of how early they are in free agency. They
I
really
like
don't
Laviska
have much
Shenault.
value.
I mean, I wanted us
I
to
like
draft
Chenault.
Shenault a couple years
Yeah.
ago. I literally, until we traded for Diggs, Laviska Shenault was who I wanted us to draft that year.
Yeah, I mean, I like Chenault. I think he could be a cool receiver, but unless we don't draft anyone, I don't see him having any chance of making the 53-man roster. And I want us to draft someone because right now we
I
only have
think he
4
can make it as the kick
NFL caliber.
returner.
But the thing is, he has never returned a punt before. That's an issue, and the punt
Darrington
it
Evans.
takes more. But you really want to keep 2 guys for one to be a punt returner and one to be a kick returner? I think that's kind of
No,
wasting a
because
spot.
they can. Well, you think about
We
it
still have
though.
Brandon Codrington.
Do we have Codrington?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we still have
Well,
Codrington under contract.
Codrington can be the kick returner.
Or they both
returner.
can, or Codrington can just be the punt and kick returner. There's no reason to
but you
keep
also need
that body. I
you
just think
need
it's not worth
another
it.
one. You need another person to play kick returner though, because they have 2 kickers, 2 kick returners back now on the kickoffs. You need one for each side because if they kick it to the other guy, whoever the fuck that is, instead of Codrington, then it's just a free in for them.
I just don't think it's worth it to keep Laviska Shenault just to be a kick returner.
Fair,
But
I
who knows? We still have plenty of time to fill out the roster to see because we still have the draft. We still have the rest of free agency. We have no idea how the roster is going to fully look like coming into training camp. So maybe he does end up making the team. But again, those are two kind of guys that we got signed. But there's not really much you need to talk about it. Bills fans are just kind of overreacting. And then one more quick point. Actually, no, I'll get into that in a second. But now let's talk about the rest of the NFL. There was basically 3 big trades that went down over this last week. DK Metcalf got traded to the Steelers for the Steelers' 2nd-round pick. Then the Seahawks traded Geno Smith to the Raiders for a 3rd-round pick, and then subsequently signed Sam Darnold to a 3-year, $3 million contract. And then the Houston Texans traded Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders for a 3rd this year, and then a 2nd and 4th next year. And then there were some late round pick swaps that I don't fully remember. But those are the 3 big trades. I guess we'll start with the Metcalf one. What are your thoughts on that trade?
Fucking steal for Pittsburgh, in my opinion. Especially being able to sign him long term. It's not going to be a rental thing or have to worry about that. DK Metcalf is one of the best receivers in the league. I don't care what anybody says. He's definitely one of the better physical guys too. So having that on your team, you built the facade of a super tough team. The one thing you still need is that quarterback to throw him the football. But if you can get a quarterback to throw them the ball, they have Metcalf. Pickens is wide receiver 2 now. I love that fit. I love the team. Right now, I've seen a lot of people mocking them like an Isaiah Bond, a wide receiver, just a slot guy. I don't know if they'd go wide receiver.
I think that'll be Roman Wilson.
Guy in round 1.
They just drafted Wilson in the 3rd last year.
Yeah, so I think that they give Roman Wilson a chance, the 3rd-round pick out of Michigan last year. So I like the move already for Pittsburgh. I think that for Seattle, I think you could have got a 1st-round pick if you would have traded him sooner. I think that they just didn't trade him as soon as I thought they could have. If you were going to trade him anyway, you might as well have just traded him at the beginning because you would have got probably a 1st-round pick or at least a 2nd and another pick, versus just the 2nd-round pick you got. But I guess we're splitting feathers on that one. We're splitting hairs, but I really don't like the move for Seattle. They're one of my losers, which we'll talk about. But I think that Seattle just made an interesting decision here, especially after really what is going to be a big retool at this point now for Seattle. I don't like that too much. I think that it's just an interesting spot for Seattle to be in. And I like the move for Pittsburgh, though. I think Pittsburgh gets a huge upgrade. They still have their first round pick. I like it for Pittsburgh.
I don't hate it for Pittsburgh. I think the pick they gave up is about accurate because they had to give him the absolute bag, and I think that's an overpay. I don't think DK Metcalf is a top 15 receiver in this league. I think he's 15 to 20, and you gave him over $30 million to be a decent wide receiver one. I also don't love the fit because George Pickens is already a great deep threat. Now you have two pretty similar receivers. They're both big body, physical, good deep threats. I obviously, I think
They're
they're
two
one of the
fist
best wide.
fighters.
I think they're one of the best wide receiver duos in the league, but I don't love the locker room aspect of it. They're both kind of diva-ish receivers. They both are strong personalities, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it could create some issues. And George Pickens is a free agent after this year. Are you really willing to pay two wide receivers top of the market money? Or are you just going to let Pickens walk after this year for nothing? Like, because he's going to want the bag. So you're going to have to pay him. You already paid Metcalf, and you still don't have a quarterback. I think they traded for the wrong guy. I think it would have been smarter for them either maybe to try and get a package of Geno and Metcalf together, or just go get Geno, and then you have a quarterback. But Metcalf is obviously a huge upgrade over the receiver they had, and they didn't even have to give up a first. So again, I don't think it's bad for them. And then for the Seahawks, you didn't want to pay him. You have to go through this retool where you have to revamp the entire offense outside of basically your running back room, JSN, and your left tackle. And I think getting this second round pick helps with that. They can go and get, because I think this draft is not strong for tackles, but it's strong for interior offensive line. Because I think a lot of the top tackles are more interior offensive linemen, like a Gray Zabel, like a Will Campbell. I think they'll be better at guard, and I think they'll be very good. So I think you can go and get now round one. You probably want to go receiver, offensive line, and then you have 2 seconds and 2/3 to go and kind of fill out this roster better. And one big thing that I don't think is being talked about for the Seahawks is they have a new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, who is a Shanahan guy. You saw the Saints at the beginning of the year last year. Those first two games, their run game was elite. That offense was firing in all cylinders until basically everyone got injured, and then it fell apart. And then I
The
think in
Bills
Seattle,
signed Dane Jackson
they did. They officially did.
8 minutes ago.
Oh
Yeah, per
well,
Mike Garafolo.
okay. Well, I like that deal. Yeah, that's yep.
I'm trying to see if I
I
can find the details here for you.
I think that's a good
Continue.
signing. I just said that I wanted him back. I think that kind of fills in that need. But I think for Seattle, you now can kind of retool that offense. And with Clint Kubiak, he's gonna make your offensive line look better than it is. He did that in New Orleans. Everyone thought that was a huge weakness. Their offensive line looked really good last year. And you have that great running back duo of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I think their run game, they're going to lean more in the run game next year. And then they just maybe go and get a veteran receiver with the money they saved, and then they draft someone. I think the receiving room, while it'll be worse than last year, isn't going to be that much worse. I think there's still talent out there at wide receiver that you can go get someone. So I like that they got out of it when they did. He requested a trade, so you kind of had to trade him at that point, and you got a second round pick. You didn't have to give him that money. You saved a lot of money against the cap this year. So I think I would probably give a C+ for Pittsburgh and a B- for Seattle. I don't love it for either side. I don't hate it. I think they're decent. The next thing we're going to talk about is basically the Seahawks trading away Geno Smith and then subsequently signing Sam Darnold. My personal opinion on it is I know a lot of people have been hating on it. It's like, why would you go from Geno to Sam Darnold? One, Geno was wanting 40, 45 mil, and he's 34 years old. I get he's played better and he's better than the numbers would say because of how bad that offensive line is. But I don't think he's that much better than Sam Darnold to be paying him 10 mil more a year while he's 7 years older. Sam Darnold's still only, I think, 27. Maybe he's going to turn 28 soon. Sam Darnold's still very, very young. He was very young coming out of college, and Geno's 34 years old. So I think you sign Darnold, you kind of fill up that offense around him with the picks you got, getting that third, and you kind of with a Clint Kubiak, who is a Shanahan disciple, who again, Sam Darnold spent time with Shanahan. What not last year, but the year before. I think Kubiak was actually on that staff. Could be wrong. I think last year was his
Mhm.
first year. I think he was the offensive coordinator that
Yeah.
year. So he's already spent time with Kubiak. So he already knows the system. And Kevin O'Connell, who's a McVay disciple, similar systems because McVay and Shanahan run similar offenses. So he's used to that style of offense. I think that you kind of make some strides to upgrade that offensive line and that wide receiver room. And I think that offense can be better than it was last year. And I expect the defense to definitely be better. So I like the move. And then on the Raiders side, not a big fan of it because what is this going to get you? A wild card contender? Maybe win. I don't think you can win a playoff game because you're not beating the Bills, you're not beating the Chiefs, you're not beating the Ravens, and maybe you
I
get
don't even think
lucky.
they're a wild card contender.
I think they're a wild card contender. I think Geno is a better quarterback than his numbers look. I think you can get the offensive line's improving, and I think that defense is going to be very good next year with a healthy Max Crosby and Christian Watkins, and I
But they
think just the
lost Nate
culture being good.
Hobbs. They don't have a secondary. They
Well,
literally don't have a secondary.
no, their safety
They
duo.
lost Trayvon Merrick and Nate Hobbs. Their two best
They
defensive
replaced.
backs.
Well, no, Ja'Cory and Bennett. Talk to Raiders fans. Ja'Cory and Bennett was their best secondary piece last year.
Well, last year specifically, but consistency-wise, Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick.
Yeah, but they replaced Merrick with Jeremy Chin. But
yeah, but Jeremy Chin didn't have
they,
that great of a year.
I don't know.
I
I
like
think
Jeremy
just
Chin
a
still.
culture upgrade. I think their defense is going to be better with it being healthier. I think the offense could be also improved because Geno is a much better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell, and I think you have Brock Bowers. You upgrade that receiving room, upgrade the running back room. Their offensive coordinator is upgrade. Chip Kelly's better um than Luke Getzey, but either
Yeah,
way,
Luke
I think
Getzey.
they should have committed to kind of more of a rebuild where they go and they just get best player available. They stick with O'Connell for the year, and then they go and get a quarterback in next year's draft when they suck again. But now they're basically going to be they're like an 8 and 9-ish team right now, 7 and 10. Maybe if everything goes
I'm
right, they
thinking
could contend for a
7-10.
wild card at 9 and 8, at 10 and 7 if everything goes right. But yeah,
It
it's
doesn't
not
help when
great.
you play in a division with a team that's like the best
They're
team in the
by
league,
they're
potentially.
definitely they're the worst team in their division still, and I don't think it's
Yeah,
particularly close.
literally.
So
See, that's
I
the thing, though.
I I
You're
get the
playing in the
QB
division like
upgrade.
that.
I get the QB upgrade. You want to try and get upgrades. Pete Carroll wants to win, but I just don't think it was smart right now. I don't think that roster's in a win now position to go and get a 34-year-old quarterback that you're going to have to pay. I get they're getting an upgrade, so I can't hate them too much for it with only giving up a third. That's a huge upgrade at quarterback, but I don't think it's enough to push the needle. So I would give them a C minus, and then for the Seahawks, I would give them a B. I don't think it's great because I think Geno is better than Darnold. But you got a third round pick to get younger and cheaper at the position. So I understand it, and I do like it for them. So I give them a B. What are your thoughts?
I really don't like this for Seattle at all. Like I mean, I don't like Geno Smith. I never really have. I think he's okay, he's serviceable, whatever. But another thing with him is I don't like the fit on the Raiders. I think it just doesn't make sense for the Raiders long term either. I think the Raiders are being stupid here. You're literally looking at the AFC that has Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, the Steelers who got better. Somebody has to come
Patrick
out of that
Mahomes.
AFC South. The Texans, the Jaguars are probably going to be at least a little bit better than last year. You got the Miami Dolphins, who are still a decent team. You have the teams in your own division with the Chiefs and then the Broncos and Chargers. There's legitimately 10 teams ahead of you, at least in my thought process here. And if Anthony Richardson can put it all together, you talking about 11. You have the Patriots, who I could very much so see getting to 6 or 7 wins this year, or maybe talking about 12. The only teams I think that are going to be worse than the Raiders definitively next season are the Titans and Browns.
And Jets.
And the other team in that conference, I could see being better than the Raiders. I could. whether that's for one reason or another. But that's besides the point. You're trying to go out and contend with a very much so mediocre roster, to say the least. You legitimately have like one amazing player on that team. Maybe, oh no, two
Two.
amazing
Yeah, I
players.
was gonna say
Brock
two.
Powers and Max Crosby. Sorry, Max Crosby, I completely forgot about you. But
Oh, you
literally,
forgot about
it's
Max?
just
I thought you were forgetting about Brock.
no, nah, man. I love the tight ends. Oh,
Yeah.
but Brock Powers, I like him on offense. Max Crosby, I think you're good, but like still, like I just think that you got a lot of issues right there with this Raiders team, and I don't know if that's the right move. Moving over to the opposite side, though, for Seattle, I also hate this move because you're trading Geno Smith and signing another quarterback that's mediocre. You're signing another quarterback that's not that much better. The only thing you can say about Sam Darnold that makes him better than Geno Smith is his age. He's younger and he's cheaper. That's it. That's literally it. I think overall terms of quarterback play, you're down, like you're going down because you can't run the ball anymore. Like Geno Smith can at least run and be mobile. Sam Darnold is a statue in the pocket. And with that offensive line, you're fucked. You're fucked. You're just not going to have a good season. And I don't care that you still have JSN. I don't care if you add another receiver in the draft. It just doesn't make sense. And I think that this is something right here, right now. I'm going to call this the worst trade of the offseason before anything else happens because both teams went the opposite directions in which they should have went. The Raiders are trying to push all their chips in the middle with a fucking Geno Smith to push all the chips in the middle to win a Super Bowl. They're not even going to win a playoff game.
Probably not even.
There's no point. Why are you? See, that's the thing is why are you trying to contend in the loaded AFC with a quarterback like Geno Smith? Wait one more season and go draft an Arch Manning or whoever else in the draft that you like.
Geno might not even be top 10 in the AFC.
And if I'm being honest, you could have still probably got Shador this year. He's falling down people's boards. If you really like Shador, you could get Shador.
Let's quickly list quarterbacks we like better than Geno. Allen, Mahomes,
Burrow.
Herbert, Burrow, Lamar, that's 5. Stroud, T-Law, that's 7.
Jordan
I'd rather
Love.
have in the AFC.
Prescott.
In the AFC. Drake May, I'd rather have.
AFC? Bo Nix.
I'd rather have Geno
I'd
than
rather
Bo
have
Nix next year.
Nix.
Well, for a career, but I think
Really?
Geno is better than Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is
for 1
extremely
year.
over.
For
like,
1
who's going to be
year,
better
you're
next
saying?
year? Yeah.
Drake May.
Obviously not top 5. Yeah, Drake May. Yeah, and then T-Law, Stroud. So that's 8 quarterbacks right there. I'd actually rather have Geno than Tua.
It's close between them.
I think they're similar archetypes.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, because I think with Geno and Tua, they're both like similar archetypes. I just think Geno is more athletic.
I think Geno is probably the 12th best quarterback in that conference, though. 12
in the AFC. I'd put him at
8. I think
9.
I think I've only really put him over whoever's going to start for Tennessee. So right now, Will Levis, I guess. The Browns,
or
obviously,
probably Cam Ward. Yeah,
but like
I'd put him over. I'd put him over Justin Fields. I'd put him over Tua. I'd put him over the Browns. Whoever they start, I'd put him over Anthony Richardson. I'd put him over whoever the Titans start. I'd put him over Bo Nix, and I'd put him over. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I'm missing. That's 6.
I'm not putting him over Bo Nix.
Oh, Tua, I think that
Fields is literally a fucking coin flip. Tua's a coin flip. I think that it's still, nonetheless, though, he is in the lower echelon of those guys. And you're trying to go out and try to compete with a player like that in a stacked conference, let alone a stacked division. And on top of all of those things going out of your favor, you move over to Seattle. What's Seattle gaining from this? A 3rd-round pick, and then they signed another quarterback that's mediocre. Seattle, if you're going to trade Metcalf, if you're going to let Tyler Lockett get cut and leave, which I think is the only one that's actually a right move, and then you get rid of Geno Smith, you might as well commit to the rebuild at that point instead of a retool. Because realistically, I don't think that the retool works very often. You have to have a flawless plan for a retool. Look at Nashville. Look at St. Louis in the NHL. They've been doing retooling for the last 4 seasons in a row. Neither of them are great. The Vikings until this point, and then the Saints, they had been doing retools. Neither of them were going out and doing anything special. I don't think retooling's the way to go. It's either you commit to a
Unless you have
rebuild.
an elite quarterback.
Yes. Yeah. If you have an elite quarterback, sure, retool. I like that.
The Bills did it
Especially
last year. They retooled and it worked.
Cincinnati right now. I could see Cincinnati going and retooling. I could see a T. Higgins trade or a Trey Hendrickson trade, retool, But
you can only do retools if you have the cornerstones that you need to win. Like, I guess, for an example, the Sabres, I don't think they should go through a rebuild. They need to go through a retool because they have the cornerstones in Tage
Thompson
and Darlene to go and build around. If you have the cornerstones that you can build around to win a championship, rebuilds work. The Seahawks do not.
Exactly.
So that's
that's what I'm saying for Seattle, and that's why I had him as a loser, because you're trading your mediocre quarterback to go sign another mediocre quarterback. That doesn't help anything other than get you a third-round pick, I guess. Woohoo, big deal. I'm sure that guy's going to make a huge impact this season. He's not. I don't care who they draft there. He's not making a huge impact.
Unless it's an offensive lineman.
Maybe. And even then, who knows?
The line was so bad, he could be an upgrade.
Yeah, but still, man, like, you're getting a statue standing quarterback, a field general who can't move very well, and you have a shitty O-line. I just don't like the move for Darnold himself. I think Darnold should have took one look at the offer and just laughed and hung up the phone. I would have, because
if they offered him the most money, then it makes sense.
Yeah, but you're telling me to go from the Vikings, which had a huge upgraded O-line, better receivers, better everything on that offense, better offensive-minded guy, to Seattle. Literally, I think Sam Darnold has been to all, like everywhere, basically, at this point. He's been to Carolina, so the East Coast middle, East Coast top right of the country in New York, middle of the country at the top in Minnesota, left at the top of the country in Seattle now, and then lower middle, which is lined up with Carolina.
He hasn't been to the South yet.
He needs to go down to the South, play middle, left, and right, and then he needs the middle.
He's going to go play in Atlanta.
So Denver.
Atlanta's going to sign him in 3 years when Michael Penix is a bust and Sam Darnold's contract's up.
Yeah,
he's going to go to Atlanta. Imagine that actually happens. And I look back.
And then he's going to go to Dallas. He's going to go to Dallas and take over for Prescott in the twilight of his career. And then he's going to head over and play for
Jerry Jones is going to get him. Jerry Jones is going to give him $50 million a year because he accidentally wrote an extra zero because he's an idiot.
Yeah, give him $500 million guaranteed instead of $50 million guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Bro.
As we move on to our final trade, the Washington Commanders, as I already mentioned, they get Laremy Tunsil for giving up a bunch of picks. What are your thoughts on this trade?
I mean, I like it for both teams. I think Laremy Tunsil's a clear upgrade for the Commanders on the offensive line. I think that's a very good fit for him. And then on the other side, you're getting a bundle of picks back for Houston where you can use to get multiple offensive linemen, because right now you need an offensive line. You don't have one. So I think that I like that a lot for them, especially since one's next year too. So like you have like a little bit more insurance of like long-term success versus just, putting all your chips in the middle this year and going for it. I really think that that's a very important thing. And then other than that, I think the Laremy Tunsil trade's kind of sparked by that an NFC Championship game where Jaden Daniels was running for his life the entire game, which, to be fair, that Eagles pass rush was clearly the best in the entire league in that playoff. So realistically, I understand why they're going out and doing this. I think it's a little bit of an overpay for sure, but I still think that it's a solid upgrade for the Commanders at offensive line. So I'm going to give him a B- here. I like the idea. I like the fit, but I think he overpaid. I really like that though for them. And then on the other side here, a lot of people have been saying that this has made Houston a loser, and this is Houston just giving up, selling. I think Houston's making the right move here. You're trading a super expendable, super expensive offensive lineman, and you're going to give yourself a chance to go out there and upgrade other positions as well as the position that you left there with multiple draft picks. So I think that it's a solid move for them. I'm going to go ahead and give them an A-. I think it could be very well B+, A-, B+, somewhere in that range. I like it for them, but I'm going to give them an A- because I think they got a little bit more than what everyone was expecting. So I like the move for Houston and Washington. I think it makes both teams a little bit more consistent here, especially for Washington. You're getting better on the offensive line, which was one of your biggest weaknesses. And then on the opposite side, Houston getting a bundle of draft picks to go out and make moves for players like Diggs, who might not come back, for the offensive line, which you're obviously going to need a lot more of now that you traded Tunsil. So I really think it just helps them get better in everything versus one specific thing.
Yeah, I agree. I would give both teams a B plus. I get why Washington made this. Laremy Tunsil is still one of the best pass blocking linemen in the league. He is a great pass blocker. His issues, he's not a very good run blocker, and he holds a lot. But Washington, or he commits a lot of penalties. Washington already had a decent run game last year. Their run game is going to be fine. They needed someone who could pass block, a tackle who could pass block. And last, as you saw in the playoffs, Jaden Daniels and all of last year, Jaden Daniels was running for his life a lot. So I think it fits a lot in their window where they clearly think they should win now. So they go and do it. And then and those picks, it's like a third this year and then a second and fourth. So it's like, yeah, they paid a lot, but they split it over 2 years. So they still have their third in 2 years, their second this year. It wasn't like they gave up their second, third, and fourth this year. They spaced it out a little bit better. So they're not like killing one of their drafts. And they kept their first round picks. So I think it's a very good trade without like fully mortgaging their future to get a clear upgrade. And then on Houston, I see everyone like their offensive line was so bad. Why would they go and trade away their only good offensive lineman? One, apparently last year, the Texans had to like bribe or like force Laremy Tunsil to just practice. He just was not fitting in that culture. It looked like he wanted to be out of there. He's 31 years old on a huge contract. Yes, he's super expensive, and he led the league in penalties last year. So, yeah, he was a good pass blocker, but the rest of that offensive line was so bad at pass blocking, it didn't matter how good he was. CJ Stroud was still getting killed. So so his positive just didn't fit them, and his negatives were bad run blocker and committed a lot of penalties, which hurt their offense. They weren't able to. They were behind the chains a lot, partly because of him. So now you go and get those picks, and I saw someone call you replace him in the aggregate, which is you basically. But now they can go and use these picks and the freed up space to get a better guard or a better center or a decent replacement at tackle. And they can build out an offensive line that is mid instead of one really good player followed up by four god
everyone else trash.
Yes,
yeah, literally.
Because your offensive line is about as bad as your weakest link. If you have one really bad offensive lineman, defense, they're just going to exploit that. Like, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your offensive line is. If you have a bad link, defenses will exploit that. And that's what they were doing. They were just exploiting not Laremy Tunsil. They're like, oh, just put our best guys on the right side, and it doesn't matter how good Tunsil is. So I really like it for them. They realized that he's getting up there in age. It doesn't stay healthy, didn't want to be there, didn't really fit. And they went and they got some very valuable picks. They got picks over the next 2 years. So now they can go and make trade-ups or trade down. They have a lot of flexibility in the draft to go and get guys that they want. So I think B plus is both. I wouldn't give Houston an A just because it is a big downgrade, and not having a tackle like that is going to hurt their offensive line. Because if they kept him and then like built the rest of the line out, their line could be decent. So it is going to hurt a little bit losing a player like that. But at the same time, I think they can like moneyball it. I guess they can moneyball that strategy of trying to build out the whole offensive line, even if the tackle position's worse. So I like the deal for both teams. As we move into our winners and losers of free agency, we each have 2 winners, 2 losers. Thomas, who is your winner? First winner.
I like the Steelers offseason. I like Metcalf. I think that he is very good to me. I like that move there. I think that's going to be a very big upgrade. I don't know what they're going to do about the quarterback position, but I really like where they're at heading into the draft. I think that they have a little bit of needs on the D line potentially, and then I also think that there's something around the cornerback room, safety room,
they just
that
got
I think
that
they could upgrade. Yeah, well, yeah, of course, but I think you still need a younger guy in that room just in case the fall off, which is inevitable at this point. So I think that you go and draft somebody late round, like 4th, 5th round corner, 3rd, 2nd round D line and linebacker, and then 1st round really go out and get your wide receiver, and then you got a really good wide receiver trio. Or in general here, I really think that you could move back your 1st round pick. I would really like it if they traded back their first, maybe got another 1st round pick just later on, and then like a 2nd round pick, so you recoup the 2nd round pick you traded for Metcalf, because then you can also fill out other needs, because right now you don't have your 2nd round pick So I think that it's better to go with a D lineman in round one, linebacker round 2/3, whatever you end up doing. Round four, corner. Round five, just depth. Round six, depth. Round seven, depth. Like at that point, probably offensive line. And I like this offensive line class. I think it's pretty deep. So I do think that they could definitely get somebody at guard, which is something they very much so need. So I would like it for them to just go into the draft and just kind of take care of those last little bit of needs. And then if you get a decent quarterback, I like it.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that idea that you brought up about them trading out of the first round. They should just trade that pick completely and get a first for next year. So the next year they can use that first plus their first to trade up and go get the quarterback of the future. I actually think that's a pretty cool idea. But
Yes.
yeah, Pittsburgh's an interesting one. I think it really all comes down to what they do at quarterback. I think that kind of defines their offseason because it's still up in the airs for what's going to happen. My first big winner is going to be the Denver Broncos. I loved what the Broncos did. It's a little bit risky, but they have had like on their defense they had two big needs: linebacker, safety. On their offense, they have two big needs: tight end, wide receiver. They filled three of those four with good players on not bad contracts. Talanoa Hufanga, when healthy, all pro level safety. Dre Greenlaw, when healthy, Pro Bowl level linebacker. Evan Ingram, when healthy, Pro Bowlish level tight end. You guys see the pattern of why it's risky? When healthy, all of them have had injury concerns, and that could bite them. But they all got them on decent value. Like I think their most expensive was Hufanga, and he was 15 million a year. I think it was like a 3 or 47. I could be getting in confused with someone else, but I really think that was a good move for them. I think they filled up a lot of needs, and now going into the draft, they only have like one big need, and that's wide receiver. And there's a pretty good chance
Luther
one of the
Burden.
first one, yeah, there's a Luther Burton or Mecca Buka, which both of them kind of fit perfectly what they need, will fall. And I really like the way Denver's building. I still don't fully trust the quarterback. I get Bo Nix put up good numbers, but I'm still not the biggest Bo Nix fan. But either way, he led them to the playoffs last year, and they're an improved team. So I think that's very, very strong offseason for them as they continue to look to build to be a contender for years to come in a loaded AFC, as we've mentioned many times. Who is your other winner?
The Bears. I think the Bears had a strong off season as well. Biggest needs were the trenches, really. And on the offensive side of the ball, they go out and get an underrated guy like Dahlman. They go out and get Joe Tooney. I like those moves. Very underrated signing and then trade, of course. I also like the Deo Odiengbo signing on the defensive line. I think he's very underrated for what he brings. And then Grady Jarrett, which I've actually seen a lot of reports on this already through the Chicago Bears outlet. But the Chicago Bears are thinking of putting him back at D tackle, which I would love because back in his prime of his career, he was a defensive tackle for the Atlanta Falcons. So I think that could convert very well for them, and I really like that move if they do it. Other than that, Deo Odiengbo can be on the opposite side of Montez Sweat, and all of a sudden you're looking at a pretty good pass rush now too. I think they still need a linebacker, an outside linebacker specifically. Trent Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds are still in the middle. I still think you need an outside guy though at some point, and I guess we'll see what happens with the draft. I don't think there's really a great outside linebacker to be fair in this class.
Jalen Walker
Maybe
is probably
one.
the only good one.
Yeah, yeah, but do you really want to take him that high in the draft? And then other than that, obviously running back, you could potentially take, not Travis, jeez, Ashton Genty, but I guess we'll see what ends up happening with the draft. I'm very intrigued to see what they do with that higher pick. Obviously there's a lot of different ways they can go about it, but I really like the offseason for the Chicago Bears. They've really upgraded the one thing that they were really bad in, which was the trenches. I think they have the skill on the roster. I think they have the skill. You have Odunze, you have Caleb Williams, you have other players, bless you, but you have all these other players. You have the defense too with Jalen Johnson in the back end. You have the safety help. I like what they have in Chicago. I think that they could very much so compete this year, and depending on how good this draft is, we could potentially be talking about a team that goes from wild card contender to maybe edging up the rankings to challenging for the division.
Yeah. No,